Hi, I'm Marcia Lehman, and I'm a Knox County Master Gardener. Today I'm at the home of another Master Gardener, and we will be pruning an Itea. It's specifically Itea virginica, and with the virginica we now know that that's a native species. It's often called Virginia Sweetspire, but we like to use the botanical name so that we're sure we know what we're working with. It can grow up to 8 feet tall. This one happened to have been behind an arborvitae, which is why it's kind of the shape it is and the condition that it's in. It doesn't really take a lot of pruning, but it does have a tendency to sucker. So if we look down here at the base, you know, here's the original plant, but right here by me is a new plant from a sucker, another one, another one, another one. And so the first thing we're going to do is to remove some of these suckers. Now, if you can get enough root, you can plant them somewhere else, but knowing that this has a tendency, you could pretty quickly end up with more Itea than you want, or plant it in a spot where it can sucker and you can create a thicket out of it. But overall, it generally requires little pruning, and the focus is on the suckers. Now, in this case, following the Arctic blast of Christmas 2022, we have a little bit of deadwood in here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I do have my soil knife, and I'm going to get rid of some of these suckers, because in this case we don't really want more plants. Sometimes you can pull them up, but at some point you're going to have to cut that root, and the soil knife works really well for that. So there, we've got those suckers out of the way, and there are no suckers coming back behind it. So the next thing that we're going to do is just to start cleaning up deadwood. And a lot of this is little. You could probably break it off with your fingers. And most of this is little tip stuff. So when you can break it with your fingers, do that. That's actually faster. This one comes back a little further, so we'll take it off back here. But as I say, the first thing we're going to do is clean up the dead stuff. Then we'll come back and look at what's left and what else we need to do. Because again, it needs very little pruning. So we're cleaning up. And the 4 Ds, dead, diseased, damaged, dysfunctional, can be removed any time of year. Normal time to prune this is after flowering, but the 4 Ds can be done anytime. So we're going to shut down the camera, clean up the deadwood, then we'll come back and show you what it looks like. We've cleaned up most of the deadwood. Probably going to find a little bit more. We always do. And I would admit that we, in cleaning up deadwood, also took out a couple of crossing branches, but probably not all of them. So a couple comments I want to make. When they're still small, when they're still this size, one of the nice things is that you can stand here and pull them apart and look down in and, you know, work with crossing branches and the like to decide, you know, can you reposition them, or does something really need to give? And in this case, you know, this one we just repositioned on the other side, and hopefully, you know, it'll continue to grow that way. You also notice that there are some spent flowers still here. Totally up to you whether or not you want to deadhead. As we were going through, we took some of them off. We left others. That's less important than getting rid of the deadwood. And as I say, we always, when we come back in here, find some more deadwood. But I like to put those down. I like to come in here and then look down into the center and move things around, reposition, and at this point, you know, then the question becomes, we got rid of the suckers that were in the front, creating new plants. There are none coming out the back. As I say, there used to be an arborvitae in front of this, so we need to give it some time to recover now that it gets a little more sunlight. They like partial sun to partial shade, so this is an optimal position. And, you know, the only other question I would have is whether or not we want to take off a stem or two that's growing out this way, and I'll consult with the owner on that decision. But otherwise, I think we're done with this shrub. And you've got a much better view in here than we had when we started. And I did mention that with all the suckers, if you have a spot where you actually want to create a thicket, you can let those suckers go and it will over time create a thicket of Itea for you. And in fact, in another spot in this garden is an intentional thicket of Itea. So we're going to stop the camera and we're going to move it and just give you a shot of what that looks like over time. And that will get a lot less pruning than what this did. For starters, we wouldn't remove the suckers, we'd let them go unless they're creeping further than we want the thicket to go. And then we would focus on removing the 4Ds, dead, diseased, damaged, and dysfunctional. It's going to whack you in the face when you mow lawn. So give us a moment to reposition the camera and we'll show you what an Itea thicket or hedge may look like. We said we'd show you an Itea thicket, so I'm not counting this first shrub on the left. But starting here, there was 1, 2, 3 Itea plants put in, and in this roughly 14-foot space, it has now suckered and filled in, and that is what's desired. This is right along the edge of a landscape bed. Obviously is going to create enough shade that weed seeds are never going to germinate. So if you want an Itea thicket, again, this is 3 plants over about 14 feet. Yeah, we have some variation in height, that gives some interesting view, but it has filled in nicely with all those suckers. So if you've got a spot where you want to do something like that, then by all means take advantage of its suckering nature. If you don't want that, then make sure you prune annually and get those suckers out of there, because if you don't, you will end up with this. So it all depends on what you want. Do you want an individual specimen or do you want to create a thicket? Your choice. So that's the basics of pruning an Itea. Thin out the suckers, take out the dead stuff, uncross crossing branches. Minimal pruning required, low maintenance plant. Thank you for joining us today. Hope you learned something.